Last weekend, I dived into my first look at Anthem on Xbox consoles, thanks to the VIP treatment from EA and Rocket Punch. Early thoughts showed a cracking looking game with clear issues on both consoles. Checkerboard rendering signs are evident on both, and some serious performance issues at this point hit all consoles. Check it out to learn more, and my upcoming Sony console first look later today, which will include an update on the X machines as we see a small patch ahead of this release. But here I check out both ends of the PC space with my entry level machine that consists of an AMD FX 8350 CPU clocked at 4.1 GHz, 16 GB of DDR3 RAM and a 2 GB Nvidia 750 Ti with a 200 core and 300 MHz memory overclock. Now, this is a decent machine for PC gaming and should be close to Xbox One levels, give or take. The premium PC experience comes from my AMD Zen 2700, again clocked at 3.9 GHz, 16 GB of DDR4 and an RTX 2070 with a 200 MHz overclock to core and RAM. This should give us that reveal spec requirements and see what we get. Step up and step in for the PC analysis to answer the question: is Anthem still playing the same beat? To be clear, I will not be passing final verdict or going too in depth until the actual release version. I did a brief analysis last week on the reveal and early signs show clear gaps. But then as now, we need to keep a final verdict on how close it gets to that reveal. The first issue I raised last time and again here is, if this is how the final game ships, then the entire team has missed this gen's memo. If your engine cannot handle persistent streaming and memory management, you have a problem right off the bat with its game design. Loading here is a huge step backwards. Not only does the game take a long time to load anything on all versions, a common issue on Frostbite that affects both Battlefield to Battlefront, but worse still, the map and game world is segmented off, almost like split render paths at this point. Now, admittedly, the loading is much better due to the CPU and the SSD on PC, but that isn't the point. The inner sanctum is a closed-off walled haven with the first-person only view and higher visual fidelity evident that includes screen space reflections on console. Off into the open world though, even on PC's Ultra, these aren't even turned on. Higher geometry, true voxel grid volumetric lighting and other touches which are all exclusive to this hubbed off area. Now this forces a long load screen every time you enter your javelin or return. It's not a great start. Now alone this would be a pain but could be accepted to an extent, but what is not is the map itself and even single missions force loads. I cannot remember the last time I felt so enclosed in one area with a timer limiting me and returning me to the walled off area. Enter a cave during a mission, load. Defeat a boss, load. Fly too far from the fixed path, load. You get my point. Now this could be a purposeful restriction placed on this demo, and if so, I feel a bad move as it greatly affects the game's enjoyment and impact. I do think this is a systemic of the development state of the game though, and not actually something limiting the demo, but we'll have to wait and see again, like I say, for final code. I said this last week and here, the game feels like a beta with a good 6 months left to fix things and refine things, possibly even alpha, if not all parts are committed as yet. The inconsistent performance on consoles and PC also points to this, from textures, assets and enemies all popping in and out of existence, chunked off segments pointing to that memory management issue even more, and the sudden surge in resource demands at times on the CPU leave me with a fuller view of the issues I raised before now. On all machines, the CPU load can suddenly spike and max out even my Zen CPU here, and those Jaguars would simply suffocate at this point. Moving into graphical options on PC, and they cover a good spread, but Battlefield players may feel this is a little anemic. You get the basics from resolution, refresh and bordered, with an additional set of detailed options that cover overall settings, and then some additional ones such as AA, post effects, texture detail, filtering, lighting and others. The game obviously uses temporal anti-aliasing here, which is evident across all versions including console. Now playing with these they may all work, but the gap from ultra and high is almost impossible to spot. And performance gains are the same, so it is possible that not are all in place or fully active yet. Medium and low offer some gains, but even from best to worst, we're seeing around 40% approximately on my RTX card, and a locked 60 FPS is off the cards, even at 1080p here. The 750 Ti can alter a little differently, and I do have some statistics which I checked, but again, you must take these with a pinch of salt. There's so many elements here, and certainly the load between the interiors and the exteriors is vastly different, so whatever you set inside means absolutely nothing when you get outside, and vice versa. And the load can actually be higher in certain areas and lower in others, but generally I'm seeing if you go from ultra right down to low, the best you're going to see is around 42.8%. That's what I'm seeing at 1366 by 768, so we're really reducing the load here. There may be some small boosts in other areas, but if you drop the resolution, it's pretty linear. You're going from 1280 by 720 right up to 1600 by 900, and that sees you gaining around 42% or 52% give or take on performance, and that's a 56% improvement on resolution output. So like I say, it's pretty linear. So resolution is your best way to gain performance back on this system, but obviously be careful there, like I covered in detail before on my Zen review. If you lower the GPU load, you're instantly going to raise the CPU load, and this is actually quite heavy on the CPU overall. It's not a massive CPU thrasher, running around 20% on my Zen here, but obviously it's a very good CPU, somewhere around 40% on my FX 8350, but if you lower the resolution, that will creep up, which is probably one of the reasons why we're seeing that target for high resolutions on the consoles, because it does actually reduce the load on the CPU and push more of the bottleneck over to the GPU, which is where they're obviously top heavy. Looking at the console's best, and then we are seeing something around the higher quality volumetric fog on PC, shadows, LOD and foliage, along with the more consistent texture use on the top end cards. At a glance though, it's not a huge lift, and the lack of SSR, which was present in the reveal, is obvious and stark by its absence here. Normally a given on PC, but again, I think we know why. In relation to checkerboard rendering, there are elements and signs on the PC version, but I'm not 100% sure it's on geometry. Post effects, certainly there are reconstruction elements there. And it's not even to the same extent on the X as it is on the Pro, which again is different to both the X and the PC. The lack of any in-game scaler also locks you to the rendering resolution. With an any tweak, a likely workaround, but I've not really got into that yet, but the files are here, you can see where they are, so I'm sure you can play around with these settings or insert your own, it might actually fix that solution. But working around, and obviously missing it in the menu system, as I said, it's probably not finished yet, or at least I alluded to, is using borderless, like I say, locks the game's resolution here under Windows 10 to the desktop, as no scaler is present. You can see the clear reduction in resolution and increase in performance here when I swap that same 720p that it's telling me it's running in full screen mode. It then pops straight down, lowers the quality and improves the performance. And this is true on the RTX card also. Usually with borderless you get the screen shrunken down at worst, so you can see the background behind it, but again we're not seeing it here. This yet again points to bug fixing and QC stage work that is likely a known entity but has not been fully implemented or completed yet. Final verdict is the consoles look a close max to high, with foliage and LOD at medium or lower. The biggest boost you get on the PC is clarity of image and resolution, because you can push it up to a native 4K, at least on my top end card, and that actually does make a difference to the image quality, but I cover that a little more in my PS4 Pro and X analysis. That's out of the way, we move into performance options, and this is where my earlier concerns are backed up even more. Taking my entry level machine at 1080-30, it's off the cards, as is 900p 30 as it stands. You can see examples on screen here playing some of the missions at 1080p, and it really holds into that 20 FPS locked due to the double buffered VSync there. You can obviously flip it back to bordered, turn off VSync, and then you get triple buffering from Windows itself, which does give you a little bit, but you're not going to see 30 FPS here, and I cover this a little more on my higher end card. The game is largely resolution bound, and this points to possible reductions in the deferred base Frostbite engine powering it and not having cutbacks on various buffer resolutions. Dropping from 1080 to 900 gives a huge performance return, and obviously that's linear with the resolution count. You shouldn't really see that kind of drop overall on performance, so I suspect there are some elements here that they can cut back and optimize in air quotes, on the game to make those improvements, both on PC and console alike. This doesn't just benefit consoles, even though many people think it does. If this is an old build, which I can believe it is, it's not really helping their case. Adding fuel at this stage is the sudden lurches in resource demands as CPU leaps by 100% on all cores and then suddenly drops. GPU having obvious stalls and the aforementioned memory management issues that affect not only the gameplay but the flow of this open game, which is the biggest hit on the game's enjoyment. Just spinning the camera at certain points can cause huge stalls, judder and dips identical as to what I covered on the console last week. This all points to memory streaming, as that is the most likely culprit. Again, it means that you're drawing more information through your I/O port off your hard drive into your RAM, decompressing, removing memory. All of that work is going on, and obviously it looks to me here that is the big area where they need to see improvement. So that's likely where the most problems sit with this performance. Now on PC, the system RAM itself can actually hit 11 gigabytes, which is not a good sign, although you can have that much RAM. It might just be creating a large cache just to store things to save time, but it's still quite a high level of GPU use and system RAM use, so I'm sure they're not getting anywhere near that level obviously on consoles, but it wouldn't be good if they are filling up their buffers so much and so frequently. This obviously drops when you reload is forced, and accompanying flush alongside it into a new area or back into the internal stage. But 4K 30 on Ultra is almost possible on my RTX 2070 here, but heavy alpha battle effects, motion blur, large characters and geometry can still cause my top end machine to buckle past that required 33 millisecond stage. To gain the best performance here, set your desktop resolution to your desired game resolution and then turn off VSync and turn on borderless, which will give you free VSync to 60 when it can, and then it will fluctuate around the 40s. Obviously, if you use a mouse and keyboard, as I'm doing here on my 750 Ti, then cap it to 30, as juddering on a mouse and keyboard is just out of the question. It's absolutely horrible. With all the obvious issues, early state of code here, and clear work left to complete, it is not all doom and gloom though. When you can explore the game, still looks truly magnificent. It feels like a vast vertical and horizontal place to explore when you're not forced to load things in, and as you fly over mountains or dive into lakes, it tucks so much into this small chunked off segment. Just like the reveal, the rendering effects and delivery are split. Unlike in the city, the open world uses cheaper screen space crepuscular rays for light depth. These are added with lens flare, alpha-based billboard fog, and distant atmospheric scattering can present a captivating serenity at times that draws much closer to that reveal. I even managed to find King Kong from E3 here, alive and well, and still looking for a fight. This game is still absolutely breathtaking at times, and the PC version is the best of them all, sharper, smoother and more elegant, but only, it seems, if you have the expensive end of the hardware to achieve it. If not, then both premium and base consoles deliver excellent 4K and 1080p versions, which lose a little of that top end shine but require much less hardware and cost for those results. The Pro has the same benefit I have covered since before launch, which may appease some, and I cover in my other video. This first contact of Anthem has given me a great taste of BioWare's latest sci-fi IP that feels rough in places and lacks refinement, yet has the signs of a truly great game, both single and multiplayer. If I was a betting man with as much development and commercial experience as I have, then a crisp £50 note says this is yet another EA-driven fiscal year release, and that could be the biggest mistake they make yet. A slap in the face to BioWare, which would also likely want to delay if this is the current build, as what is here now is a diamond in the rough. With a few more months it would shine for a June release and much less competition, but it may be sent out in February to die, and that would be a truly appalling and horrendous act. I can only hope it is delayed, or this build is indeed a good few months out of date, and then all my concern is for nothing. Anyway, As always, I'm completely self-funded and independent, so if you like this and anything else that I do, please help support the channel by subscribing, sharing where appropriate, follow me over on Twitter, and talk about my work here. This is a part-time thing. I don't do YouTube full-time. And that's it. I'll catch you guys and girls on the next one with yet more Anthem to come on console gaming.
The Arcanists have sent out a request for some help.